Carl Frampton. You thought you fought here, didn't you? But you didn't.
Yeah, I got that wrong. I was just
in
clearing
the
it up
book.
with
Wait to
you.
hear this. Yeah, go on. You were giving off about Downpatrick.
I told a story. I had a fight when I was a kid, and I've talked about it in the book. And in my head, for the last 20 years, I thought it was Downpatrick, but it wasn't. It was Oma. My dad corrected me. And I fought a kid. It was a 4-round fight. The referee came over at the end of the 3rd round, and it was his club, his own show, and said, "Look, we're just going to call the decision now," because I was beating him up, like, and they didn't want him to get emptied in the last round in front of all his mates. Went out to the centre of the ring, and the winner in the red corner of the other kid. Like, it was a 4-round fight, and you've stopped the fight around early, and you're saying he's the winner, but I thought it was Downpatrick, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
Bet you it was Downpatrick, and he's just not. I don't think I've seen you looking as fit, so ill at ease with yourself, so easily with yourself. Life outside the ring must be quite good for you at the moment.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm busy. Really busy doing stuff with TNT as a boxing pundit, whatever you want to call it. Got a whiskey going at the minute as well.
You have, yes.
Which is going all right. It's going well. And our different bits and pieces. So it's weird. Some days some weeks there's not a lot going on. Then other weeks it's hectic. So from now, this point, kind of the last few weeks and going forward to the summer is pretty busy.
Do you miss the boxing?
No, not. I get asked that all the time. Genuinely don't miss it. I mean, I could think of nothing worse than trying to get ready for a fight again. Just the hard training it done. Like I played a charity football match yesterday, and I'm still feeling it. So, yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I'm still involved, obviously, commentating and doing the punditry stuff that I do. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't miss it.
So when you retired, what, three years ago?
Just over 3 now.
Just over 3 years ago. I mean, was it easy to walk away from at that stage? Because this was something you've been involved with all your life as a child.
No, it was. Yeah, it was an easy decision. I actually made the decision going into my last fight. I spoke to the people closest to me. I didn't want to kind of broadcast it because it almost sounds a bit negative talking about retirement before you've had a fight. But the plan was to win the fight, become a 3-weight world champion. That was the big
This was
dream.
against Jamal Herring.
Jamal Herring, yeah, and then retire as a champion, go out on top. Like, what a way that would have been. But I lost the fight, and I made the right decision. I wasn't the same fighter at the end as I was 3 or 4 years before it. So it was the right thing to do.
Had you won that, you would have been a world champion at 3 different weights.
Yeah.
Which has never been done before.
Never been done in
Ireland, anyway.
In Ireland, yeah. So there's been Steve Collins, myself, Katie Taylor. I've done it at 2, but never a 3-weight world champion. So I was just trying to reach for a wee bit of glory. That was all.
2's all right. Don't be greedy.
So
I remember that fight, and I remember the interview that you gave in the ring afterwards. One of the most emotional interviews I've ever seen. There was tears in your eyes all the way through.
I cried like a baby. Aye.
But you knew you were retiring.
Yeah, I knew I was retiring, but it was just, I wanted to win it. Even everything that was going on, like, it was in the middle of COVID. It was in Dubai. There was maybe 250 people there watching the fight. A lot of my family weren't there. My wife and my kids weren't there. I had this thing in my head that I wanted to dedicate the win to my old coach Billy McKee, who just recently passed away before it. So I was very, very emotional, and but once I'd done a bit of gurning, it was all right. After a week or so, I was dead on.
Had you won it, you would have continued though.
No.
Oh,
I wanted to win it, and that was it. That was the big way to. I mean, what better way to go out as a 3-weight world champion? So my mind was made up going into the fight. I was retiring, but so it wasn't like I was beating the retirement. I knew that that's what was happening. Did
Christine,
anyway.
did your wife and did family know?
She knew. The people closest to me knew. My coaches knew. A few close friends, Christine, obviously, and my mum and dad and stuff. But there wouldn't have been too many people apart from them.
You're a 2-time world champion, 2 different weights, super bantamweight and featherweight. For those people maybe tonight they don't know so much about boxing, but they're here to see you, they like what you do and they like what you say. Describe those 2 weights for me. So
super bantamweight was £122 or 8 stone 10, and featherweight was £126 or 9 stone. So only £4 of a difference in between the weight divisions, but it made a big difference to me. Like super bantam weight was a struggle towards the end, like really, really, really hard for me to make £122, and it was affecting my performances as well. Like I remember a couple of fights, the last sort of 3 rounds were always tough for me. And my first fight at featherweight was against Leo Santa Cruz. Well, he was a quality fighter. He was a 3-weight world champion already.
Yeah.
Since then, he's went on to be a 4-weight world champion. But that was my first fight at featherweight at a new weight against the toughest opponent I've ever fought, and I just felt full of energy just moving up them £4. So it made a big difference.
I was doing a bit of research. The average weight of a 14-year-old is 8 stone.
Yeah.
What age were you?
I was when I won of 26 or something like that. Yeah.
So how on earth at 26, as an adult, do you keep that weight
Well,
down?
so my weight, my walk around weight was probably 10.2, 10.4 maybe, getting down to 8 stone 10. It's a fine art to really get it right, and 12 weeks of hard training, 12 weeks of really, really strict dieting, and then within fight week, you're normally probably going into fight week, so 5 or 6 days out from the fight, you're probably still 10 pounds above your weight, but lean, and it's just water. The last sort of 9 or 10 pounds is water.
And how do you get rid of it?
You do hot baths, you do saunas, you train in sauna suits. I've done this thing as well towards the end called water loading. So it was like you kind of trick your body into thinking. So how it works is you do from maybe 6 days out, you're drinking 8 litres of water a day. And it's actually pretty difficult to do that. So you're banging the water into you. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 8 litres each day. Thursday,
Are you eating as well?
Yeah, but very little. I used to eat at that stage only like meats and fish and veg, no carbs or anything like that. So you're literally you're not feeling very well in the lead up to a fight. Very little energy. But the water loading kind of seemed to work. So 8 litres a couple of days, and then you cut it down drastically, but your body's still like piddling as you were before. But there's little tricks and all. Stay off of salt. Salt holds on to moisture. Any sort of sugar, glucose holds on to moisture. Get rid of all the salt and any sugars from your diet. And there's this thing you do where, so it's a bit boring this now, but there's fibre. So there's a low fibre diet, right? So fibre actually helps you go to the toilet, but fibre sticks to your gut and intestines. Like they reckon there's maybe 3 or 4 pounds of just stuff in there that is of no use to anybody. So if you delete the fibre from your diet completely, you lose that. You lose a little bit of weight. So all these sort of things, you have to, and they all have to work.
I can see now why you don't miss at all the boxing.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the very start. You were born and raised in Tigers Bay, a well-known loyalist area of Belfast, where, like the initials UVF, UFF, UDA, you knew all those initials from a very young age. Yeah. How aware were you of the area that you were living?
I was very aware. I lived, my street was called Upper Canning Street, and it was the closest street to the New Lodge, which was the Republican housing estate, literally next door. So my street was here, and the New Lodge was here, and that was where all the madness kind of happened, especially in the summer months. But you're certainly aware of it when you're a kid. You're kind of like, a bit of a cliche, but you're like a sponge, and any bit of information you get, you kind of latch on to it and believe it, and you're listening to the kind of the people in the area who are influential, but in a bad way, but you don't know that at that stage. And you're
one of your neighbours was Mark Haddock.
Mark Haddock lived next door.
One of the biggest killers.
didn't know that because he was young. I was young when he lived there, and then there was a loyalist feud, and he got kicked out along the Mount Vernon direction. But he lived next door to me for a while, yeah. Actually, and I talked about it in the book. I found a handgun when I was a kid behind. There used to be a bit of waste ground across from my street, and a couple of big boulders, and under this boulder there was a handgun and gloves and a balaclava, and I remember just going back and telling my dad, and he just says, "Stay away from it," and that was it. Did
anybody ever talk to you about loyalism or?
No, not like joining up or anything like that. No. And I think it was because of the boxing. They understood that what I wanted to do, and they knew. There's David, didn't just spot me. They understood what I wanted to do, and to be honest, my old coach Billy McKee wouldn't have allowed anyone to get close to me like that. Billy was really, really well respected in the area, and but I know people of my age who would have joined up, and I mean, without boxing, it quite possibly could have been me. Who knows? Just living in that area and being influenced by the wrong people. But I was very lucky that I had a few good influences around me, and my parents and Billy McKee especially, and a few others.
But you didn't know you were a Protestant.
I knew I was a Protestant. You
knew you were a Protestant.
I knew I was a Protestant.
And you knew that the 12th of July was the biggest day of the year for you kids.
Yeah. No, we knew all that, yeah. And you kind of just grow up, and your mind gets warped easily a wee bit. And but all my kind of integration was done through boxing. I was up and down. I was in the New Lodge all the time, like training in the Holy Family Club. My club and the Holy Family had a great relationship. Billy had me over all the time, up and down the falls, and I think you start to realise that these kids who you're, brought up and supposed to hate because everybody else hates them in your area are probably more similar to you than you think. And I've just tried to be rational about it, even at an early age.
What age did you first put on a pair of boxing gloves?
7, very young.
And why boxing? Because there was no great tradition of it
in my family or anything. No, well, it was curiosity really. The club was only down the street. It was 150 yards from my front door, and I knew there was a boxing club there. And I was into any sport. Like I was always just outside playing football against the wall, or I even played rugby in school a wee bit. I played any sport going, and I was just curious as to what boxing was going to be like. My mum brought me down with a group of friends, and that was it. Really, I liked it, and I think one of the reasons why I liked it was I was a quiet kid, and in the street, if anyone, there was a loud mouth around or anyone said anything, I'd have shied away and maybe not backed myself in a fight or anything. But when I was sparring the kids who were the loudmouths in the street, like I was beating them up, and it felt nice, and that was one of the reasons genuinely why I probably took to it.
So there was just the one club there, the Midland Club?
Midland, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the boxing was, as you said, carried out in the Falls Road, and you were going across there. Did you know where you were going? Were you worried about where you were going?
Yeah, I was for a while. I remember, so Billy would always drive me into the New Lodge, which was, again, from our club to their club, probably 500 yards.
But it was the enemy's territory. And I was just comfortable driving in, that was fine. You get off at the front door and then you go up the stairs into the gym and it's okay. But Billy wasn't available one night, and there's another coach called Joe Farrell. And he brought me over for sparring, but Joe didn't drive. And he says, "Well, walk in." And I remember thinking, like, are you mental, like walking? or walking over? And we just walked in, and but I was aware, like there were irrational fears, you know what I mean? Nothing was really going to happen, but as a kid, you don't really know that. Did anybody say anything?
Nah, I don't think so. There have probably been a few kids, maybe in club shows or whatever, say one or two things, but for the most, you were respected as a boxer. Even I remember one of my first experiences was in the PD, in which is it's a Pro V drinking den, like in Andytown, and there was a club show there, and two big lad from our club fought one of the local boys from Oliver Plunkett in Andytown, and they just had this war. They weren't very good, but it was just like an exciting fight. Like two guys getting hammered into each other, blood and snatters everywhere, and I remember just thinking that seeing the respect of the crowd, the whole crowd for both fighters, and that was something I really took in even at a young age.
So you loved it, and you fought all over Northern Ireland as an amateur. You fought for Ireland. You went there. Why Ireland? Why didn't you fight for?
It's an All Ireland sport, isn't it? And that's people ask me that question as well about why did you not try and fight for GB?
Yeah.
And it was never genuinely. It was never a thought. It was just like the rugby. It's an All Ireland sport, so I was happy to represent Ireland. I remember being called up. Like my first international was against Ireland versus England, the schoolboys international, and I remember just the feeling of pride, like of I'm representing my country here. This is unbelievable. And I wore my green vest, the singlet you get literally until it was too dirty to wear anymore. It was stinking. But I was dead proud. I was dead proud to represent.
Did you never get any backlash from your own people?
Never. People knew what it was, an All Ireland sport, and that was fine. I mean, like there's a bit of a saying, and anyone, boxing people will understand this. Like being from Northern Ireland, whether you're a nationalist or a loyalist or a unionist, whatever you want to say, go down the south and fighting in the All Ireland Championships. There's a bit of a story. You're already a point or 2 points behind if you're just from up here. So imagine me, a wee man from Northern Ireland, going to try and fight in the GB tournaments. Like there's no chance. You know what I mean? So no, I was very proud to fight for Ireland.
You had a fabulous amateur career. 118.
No, see, that was I had about. Wikipedia says about that 118, something like that, but it's probably closer to 200. They had me. I think Wikipedia says 108 fights and 100 wins, which is wrong, way miles away. It's more like probably 200 fights and maybe 150 wins. So I've been beaten.
You were beaten 50 times, right?
Around 50 times.
You weren't that good then. That's only extra. You never got to the Olympics.
No.
Would you like to have got to the Olympics?
I'd love to have.
What stopped you from the Olympics?
Well, there was a wee bit of politics in terms of what was going on in the Irish Boxing Association at the time. The kid who went to the qualifiers in Beijing Olympics 2008, David Oliver Joyce, actually a friend of mine, and he was selected to go to all 4 qualifiers. In fairness, he was a number 1 in Ireland at the time, but I was starting to outperform him. And there was talk of a box-off happening for me and him to have a fight and see who wins, and then they would go to the remainder of the tournaments. And the box-off never materialised. He went to 4 qualifiers, didn't qualify, and then when he came back home, I beat him. And when I turned pro shortly after that, it was almost like kind of sticking my fingers up to the association, saying like, you should have given me not saying I would have qualified, but there's 4 qualifiers, give me a go at 1 at least.
Yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah.
So the word professional now started to appear.
Yeah. Who
approached you? You got a few offers to turn pro, did you?
There was a few. There was an American called Art Palulo, who was not really a big name then, but he was back in the 70s, 80s, and he was trying to get back involved in boxing. He was he had approached me about kind of signing with him and basing myself in America. Which was something I thought about. Barry Hearn approached me before, this was how long ago it was, before Eddie even got involved.
Yeah,
so Barry was a dad. Warren approached me too, and then Barry McGuigan approached me. And
so who was advising you on to what to take at this stage?
I've taken advice from my amateur coach, Billy McKay, and my dad and stuff, and that was it.
That was it.
Jerry Story a bit as well, actually, who
from the Holy Family.
From the Holy Family, who had a great relationship. Well, still do have a great relationship with Jerry, but they were kind of advising me, and McGuigan seemed really, really keen. He talked highly about me and said a lot of good things, and talked about my style, and I have an exciting pro style, and one of the main things with going with Barry as well was he didn't have a stable of fighters really at that point, so I knew I'd have got the majority of the attention. I wouldn't have been lost in amongst 50 or 60 boxers with another promotional company, so that was one of the reasons why I went with Barry.
So what was the offer from Barry?
Barry offered, I can't remember exact figures, but I remember it being I remember it being small. So I think the first offer might have been 6 or something like that K to turn over. That was like a signing on fee. And I remember thinking, like, I mean, I'm number one. I was number one fighter in the Four Nations at the time at featherweight in the UK. I was, doing really well in the international scene. And I'd said to him, I'd listened to his offer. I put the phone down, spoke to Billy McKee and Gerry Story, and you allowed to swear?
Once.
Billy McKee says, when I told him, he says, $6,000, whatever it was, Billy says, tell him to go and fuck himself. So 20 was what was in my head, and I said, look, I was very nervous. I phoned him back, Barry. I was like thinking more like 20 for a sign-on fee, which it was fair. Wasn't me being greedy. And he phoned back shortly after and says, okay.
20 grand.
Yeah.
And then he offered you a grand a round. For a 4 round.
Yeah, so you're
for
getting
4 fights.
So you're getting four grand a fight for a 4-round fight, which is good because I know some fighters who are fighting for an 8-rounders for a lot less than that. So that was decent as well.
Right. What were you doing for money up until then?
Sponging. Mum and Dad, Billy McKee helped me out. My wife as well. Like I was living off her student loan for about a good year, maybe. But all these people backed me. Like I owe a lot to them because they kind of backed and they seen the dream that I had, and they didn't know if I was ever going to make it. Who was to know that? But they backed me anyway, and it all worked out in the end.
Well, you mentioned Christine, or student grant. What about your school days? What was happening in school with you?
I was all right in school. I wasn't a bad kid. I was focused on boxing, so I wasn't daft, but I didn't do as well as I should have done in GCSEs and stuff like that. I stayed on to do my A levels. Done my first year of A levels, and then none of my mates that I hung about with got. I was all right. I got decent results at AS level, so the year before A levels.
Yeah.
But none of them did, so they couldn't come back. So I done about 2 weeks in upper sixth, and then I was bored, and I said.
But you went to Ulster University.
I went to TAC then after that for a while, and all these things. When I was going to TAC and all, like I was just really just delaying thing. I was just doing something. The dream was always boxing.
Always boxing.
And I done okay in TAC, and I got accepted on the a course in the University of Ulster in Jordanstown, and
On sports management.
sports. It was something like that, sports science or something. I don't even remember.
How long did you last?
One day, and I remember going actually. So it was an evening class, and I thought it was like a bit of an introduction to see what was going on, and it wasn't. It was a proper class, and I had nothing with me. And I remember walking through the university and asking someone could they direct me to a shop. Went into the library, can you direct me to a shop? I need to buy a pen and a bit of paper at least. And this yuppie type just said, this is the library. And I went, oh, I know what it is like, but I'm looking for the shop. And that was it. That was one day in university, and I went back.
But you did meet Christine.
Well, that was so she had a degree in criminology and criminal justice, and I was talking to her at the time actually, like.
Was this a dating website you were on?
No, it was.
It was a dating website you were on.
It was. People might remember. Remember MSN Messenger and all that sort of stuff. Bebo and all like back in the day, like a long time ago. And I'd been talking to her for quite a while on this. And when I was waiting on the bus to go home, my first day and my only day at university, she comes to the bus stop with her mate, and I knew it was her, but I wasn't 100% sure, and I was on my own. I was too shy to even approach her or ask.
You knew that this was the girl you were talking to, you were messaging.
But she had no idea that I was even there. I was kind of hiding the other side of the bus stop. And yeah, that was the first time I seen her, yeah.
And when did you realise she was a Catholic?
No, I knew from the start. I knew early on she was a Catholic. But again, genuinely, like it didn't bother me.
Well, it must have worked. Like,
what I was concerned about was, I had no concern about going. She's from Polglass in West Belfast. I had no concern about going up there, and I went up quite often. But I was concerned, and maybe it was a bit irrational for me. I was concerned about bringing her to Tigers Bay, And you got to remember, I was always in West Belfast and all the different clubs and even social clubs, boxing and fighting. So I genuinely didn't have a concern going up there, but I was worried about the reaction of people of me bringing a Catholic back home. But again, it was irrational when people found out. No one gave a fiddler's, genuinely.
Really?
No one cared.
No
one said it to me anyway.
But they daren't say it to you. How did your parents react and her parents react?
Her dad, I'd never met her dad. Her dad had died when she was about 15 or 16. Her mum was fine with it. Her mum's good crack. I got on dead well with her ma. My parents were okay with it as well, but I remember my mum had told people that I went to school in Glengormley, so she'd told people that I'd met a wee girl from Glengormley rather than a kid from Poleglass. It was kind of a concern for her in case someone said something.
Yes.
So, but again, I don't think now looking back there was too much to worry about.
So you were sponging off Christine, you were sponging off your parents, and all of a sudden you get this 20 grand from McGuigan plus the fights.
Yeah.
And how did that pan out at the start? Did it all start out well?
Yeah, it started really well. For a number of years, it was going really well. Couldn't complain. Doing what it was meant to do. Maybe it wasn't being as active as I wanted. I think there was probably not. I think that. Can't remember how many fights it was meant to have contracted per year, but I'm not sure if we hit the number of fights. But anyway, I was at that stage anyway. I thought I was being really, really well looked after and guided well.
So what was the breakthrough? What was the big one that led you on the big path?
For me, probably the European title win against Kiko Martinez. So I fought him twice, but that was my first fight, and that's when people kind of sit up and take notice that the kid might have something here and it's not all bluster. And it was a really hard, even for me, like personally, that was a moment for me where I thought that I could do something here, because I had to fight through. I had 2 busted eardrums in the fight. My hands were busted and cut. I was pissing blood after the fight, but I stayed in and won. And it was really, really hard. And I remember just thinking, like, if I can come through a fight like that and get my hand raised at the end, I can go a long way. So for me, like personally, it was just that
was a big.
Yeah.
How big a step up is it from the amateur into the professional career?
Well, again, that depends. And I mean, the top amateurs would beat a lot of the top pros over 3 rounds. You almost have to separate them. It's almost like 2 different sports: amateur boxing and professional boxing. But when I turn professional, what happens is you fight guys called journeymen, who aren't the best. They don't win that often, and you get a bit of experience by fighting guys like these. But the journeymen, I hadn't boxed someone in the amateurs at the journeyman's level in maybe 6 years. I was boxing guys far better than these guys, but it was just because it was, like I said, a new sport. I was kind of learning as I went on.
What was your first big fight in Belfast, up at the Odyssey or at the Titanic?
Yeah, I'd won at the Titanic. Well, I had a few fights before. I fought on a Paul McCluskey undercard the first time I fought him in
Where
Belfast.
Was that in?
King's Hall.
Yeah.
Which was good. That was a great experience for him. It was only a 6-rounder though. It was only kind of starting out. But the first kind of it's not the first. I had a few fights in Belfast, but the one on the Titanic slipway was
huge,
massive. Yeah, it was a great night. 16,000 open air stadium, purpose built stadium. Built to house the fight, and that was it. And I was fighting a guy that had already beaten.
Yeah. I was there that night, and the atmosphere in all round was fantastic. What was it like as your hand was raised in that round and looking out on the sea of faces?
Unbelievable, genuinely unbelievable. You call yourself a world champion, and if you do it once, if I'd have won that title and lost in my next fight, I would always been able to call myself a world champion. So it was almost like. It was just a dream achieved. It was I don't know. I'd love to bottle the feeling up, but it was magic.
What was the biggest night of your career, do you think? When
I would say probably the Santa Cruz fight, the first one, in the Barclays Center in New York.
Yeah.
What I just previous to that fight, I'd unified. I'd beat a guy called Scott Quigg and took his title off him. So I had 2 belts at super bantamweight. Really struggling to make the weight. Got offered this fight with Leo Santa Cruz, who had been chasing actually at super bantamweight when he was the champion, and the fight never materialised. And yeah, I got offered to fight him. My first fight at featherweight. Normally you would have 1 or 2 feely out fights to see what you're like at the weight, but I was offered this fight. Money couldn't turn down. Even the money that I was being told I was getting. But it was that was the big one.
we have arrived at a point now that I'm going to have to talk to you about, and that is the relationship with the McGuigans. Up until that fight, things had been going all right, yes?
Up until
before that,
cracks started to happen around the Quigg fight.
Okay, but up until that Quigg fight, you were living with Barry.
Yeah.
Your relationship, he treated you as one of his own.
Yeah.
And everything was hunky dory.
Yeah, it was. It seemed that way from the outside anyway, but around.
But you thought that.
I thought that I did, but around it, so that period of from about 2016, end of 2015 was where I just started to think like things are maybe not as straightforward as they seem here. I was asking questions that wasn't getting answered. I was waiting for close to a year on a couple of purses. Like, you fight, you deserve to be paid for when you fight, and
why didn't you ask for it?
Well, I did, but I was just fobbed off with, what was the old line? We're trying to give it to you the most tax efficient way possible. But as Barry McGuigan's not an accountant. Like, you just give me the money and I'll sort that out with my accountant.
There's an example in your book, and it says after your rematch fight with Kiko Martinez, the overall purse for that fight with sponsorship and ticket sales and television and all the rest was around about £2 million.
Well, the overall pot of money
was £2 million.
Yeah.
That was for everybody.
Yeah.
And you say you ended up with 145,000.
Yeah.
That is fact.
That's fact. Yeah, fact.
So
that was about 7% of the overall pot of money.
And what were you expecting?
Well, I mean, at that point that was my highest payday, and these are all things that I didn't find out until the court case and how much money was actually in the pot. So I didn't find these out until the court case. But I'm just thinking, well, 145 grand at that time was the most money I ever received or seen. So I was just happy for that. But I didn't have the ability really to sit down and just break it all down at that stage. I was just doing everything on trust, completely trusted Barry and his whole family, and I was just a very, very naive kid, and I had no one really around me. Like my dad's doesn't come from a business background. Even Billy McKee, who offered me great advice and always full of wisdom, didn't really come from a background of business. So no one that was close to me that I could take advice of really knew either then what was going on.
What happened to Gerry's story? Because Gerry was sort of in your corner for a long while, and he seemed to have been elbowed out.
Yeah, he was kind of. I think Gerry was pushed out. So Gerry was. When I turned pro, Barry had asked about who do you want to train you, and I said Gerry story because Gerry had trained a few pros and I had been training with Gerry anyway, and it was strange to me because I always thought him and Gerry Story were like best of pals and great respect for each other, but Barry didn't want me to train with Gerry Story. He wanted me to go with Harry Hawkins, who again is another good coach, guy from West Belfast. But I didn't know Harry like I knew Gerry, and I kind of stood my ground a wee bit and said, no, I want to train with Gerry. Barry then started to bring me over to England for sparring and stuff and introduce other trainers, a guy called Kevin Murray, up around Manchester, and then kind of approaching the European title fight. Shane had been kind of pushed in a wee bit, and in fairness, Shane was a good coach. He was good at holding the pad and stuff, but he'd never coached anybody at that stage. He'd never done anything in the boxing game, even at on a personal level. But yeah, it's Gerry. I remember Gerry. It was before the European title fight with Kiko, and that was another reason why the fight was a big win for me. Gerry came up to me just once I got off the scales and asked could he have a word with me. So a day before the fight, I said, look, Gerry, I want to go down and get something to eat here. I'm on down. And he said, no, let me speak to Nice son. And you said, I'm not going to your corner tomorrow night.
This was before the big fight.
Yeah, and I was upset, but I hugged him, and I knew why. I knew he'd been pushed out a bit. Shane was then my number one trainer at that stage, but I felt really sorry for Gerry.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
But I should have been thinking back now, like the person I am now. I would have said something, but then I was just a kid going along and doing what I was told.
So the McGuigan family, the whole family was easy in.
Yeah.
Barry's wife was involved.
Barry's wife probably pulls all the strings, if I'm being honest. She's, in my opinion, the matriarch of the family, and any decision at that. And I haven't been around them in a long time, but at that stage, everything went through Sandra. Yeah.
You see, all the things you've written in the book, like it's very damning on the entire McGuigan family. Has there been any sort of feedback from that book? Has Barry said or done anything about the things that you've written?
No.
So everything you've written is factual.
Well, it has to be. I mean, I had my legal team look at it. The publisher was worried as well about having things, maybe things in that shouldn't be in it. So I had two different sets of legal team look at it, and everything I said in that book was factual, or McGuigan would have sent me a writ looking to try and sue me. At this point, I still haven't got one.
What a surprise when the taxman came knocking at your door with a bill, an unpaid VAT bill for £400,000 for Cyclone Promotions, of which you were supposedly a director.
Yeah, so I was a director. That was one of the reasons. So when we had a bit of a relationship with Matchroom at the time, and this was again around the European title fight with Kiko, Barry wasn't happy with how things were going. Barry McGuigan, that is, with Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn wasn't happy. He was saying that Barry wants to manage and promote, and it's a conflict of interest, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that. But he came up with this idea. Look, we're going to start Cyclone Promotions. You're a big enough name now. You just sold out the Odyssey in your last fight. We'll base you at home in Belfast. You'll become a director of the company. You'll be involved in every decision made, and you'll get your purses, plus you'll receive 30% profits of the shows. So that's what I was told, but as a director, I was the only director never paid.
Who were the other directors?
Blaine McGuigan, Jake McGuigan, Barry, Sandra. There's a guy called Rupert Phillips was involved as well, and Shane may have been a director. I'm not 100% sure, but each director got paid except me.
You never get paid.
No, and I asked the question. I remember asking the question about like what's going on with this 30%, and again naively I believed this at the time. Jake McGuigan and Blaine McGuigan both gave identical answers and said, look, the shows aren't making profits. We're getting a wage out of it, and that's it. And I just believed that. But if I had sat down and thought of, like, the undercards were cheap. Barry never really had big names on the undercards, so it wouldn't have cost a lot of money for the undercard fighters. You're selling out arenas, it's on TV, sponsorship coming in left, right and centre. I knew what I was being paid. So for me to believe that there was no profits in the shows was a bit silly and a bit naive.
What about your own sponsorship deals? You were approached by quite a few people.
Loads of people wanted to sponsor me, but Barry didn't really allow it to happen. And I don't really know the actual reason, but I can guess, and I think it was. I know there was a few sponsors reached out looking to sponsor me directly, and Barry and Sandra were saying, look, well, instead of Frampton, what about Cyclone Promotions as a whole sponsor the show, which I was seeing nothing from. So that was, I mean, I was looking around. Scott Quigg, for example, the guy who I fought, was covered in sponsors. He must have been earning a fortune in sponsors. And I remember bringing it up with Barry, saying, look, Quigg, no disrespect to Quigg, but he's not the sharpest tool in the box. And he can't really speak well, but he's got all these guys throwing money at him to like wear their logo on their shorts. Why can I not have this? And he says, you don't want to look like a race car driver, is what he told me. And again, going
And did you have anything on your shirt?
I had McGuigan's gym on my shorts. And Cyclone Promotions on my shorts. I had another sponsor that appeared on my shorts. So Barry always they would provide I would tell them which colours and they would get the shorts sorted. There was another company, I can't even remember the company's name. When I had my American debut in Texas, their logo was a cactus, and they were on my shorts and I was just like, who's this? Like, so someone was sponsoring me, but
you didn't know.
I wasn't getting any readies out of the back of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were very naive.
I know. Yeah, very, very naive, gullible, but trusting as well. And I mean, that's not a bad trait to have, to trust people, but I think it was just, I mean, even my wife would tell you now, like I'd go and speak to someone for 10 minutes in a pub, and if they've been dead on, I think they're my best mate. So I need to be careful about that going forward.
Right, back to this £400,000 that you got a tax bill for. You owed. What happened that bill?
So that was going in, which fight? The fight that it would have been my last fight with the McGuigans. Fight with a kid, Andres Gutierrez. He busted his face in the shower.
Oh, I remember that.
Literally, the day of the fight.
Yeah, but you were overweight.
I missed the weight as well.
Yeah.
But
see, that was very suspicious.
I know. I see. Looking back and thinking about it, if I'm on the outside, it's very suspicious, and it probably still is suspicious.
He slipped in the shower in the Europa or somewhere. Somewhere
in the Culloden is where he was. Yeah, and so I seen the kid. Like, he came back up. It was after the weigh-in. So what I think happened was I seen him maybe 7 weeks before the fight, in Belfast at a press conference, and he was big, like he was heavy. He was nowhere near the weight. I think he's literally killed himself to make the weight. He's made the weight, fair play to him. He made it and I didn't. And then he's went and banged a load of fizzy drinks into him or whatever, things that he hadn't been eating, blood sugars all over the place, and he's fell in the shower. When he came to Europa, his tooth was out. He had a big cut in his chin, and he had a cut in his lip. And in fairness to the kid, he wanted to fight still. He still wanted to fight, but there's no way a doctor would have passed it. And,
right.
But going into that fight, that was the week previous to that fight, was when the taxman arrived and handed Christine 400 grand, 400 grand bill. And I was starting to think, I think I need away from these people. But when that happened, that was it. Like, that was done. But so I wanted to have the fight. I didn't want people to think that, because the previous fight to that was the Santa Cruz fight that I lost. So I didn't want people to think, sour grapes, he's been beat by Santa Cruz, he's just left him now. So I wanted to have the fight against Gutierrez, beat him, and then cut ties with him. But it never happened. And to be honest, you know what? Thinking back, my dad, he never really says much and doesn't get involved, says it was a blessing in disguise that fight didn't happen, because my head was up my ass, genuinely. Yeah. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I'd missed the weight. I tried to make the weight, but missed it. Just wasn't in a good place mentally at the time.
What happened to 400 grand, the bill?
It was paid by Cyclone. I resigned as a director because there was no point me being a director if all these directors are getting paid money and I'm the only one that's not seeing it, but I'm getting bills sent to me. And then when that fight fell through, remember the next day, I blocked all their numbers and contacted, it's actually my friend Jim Conlon, who Jim owns a few bars and places around Belfast. I had a chat with him, and then he says, "Speak to John Finucane." And I did, and I had a chat with John and explained my side of the story, and that was it really.
After you left Barry, you signed up with a company called MTK.
MTK, yeah.
Now, MTK was founded by Kinahan,
Yeah,
the drug dealer.
yeah.
Did you know that?
I knew who it was founded by, yeah.
Why did you join them?
Well, at the stage,
That was a risky thing to do, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think it was. MTK at that time were probably the biggest. I mean, they were involved with every promoter on the planet. Top Rank, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, Frank Warren. They had some of the big fighters like Fury on their books. And a lot of my friends were on their books, Mick Conlon, Paddy Barnes and stuff. So, do you know what? I probably knew I was going to get a bit of flack for it. But if I'm being honest, I didn't care. My head was up my ass and I just wanted to start earning some money and fighting and getting paid for what I deserved. And the thing with MTK as well, people talk about, selling out and taking drug money and all this here. And MTK never paid me. They were advising me and the promoters paid me. And I was being promoted by Frank Warren and Top Rank as MTK advised. So I never got a penny off them. But, people, you may even ask, do you regret joining them? Absolutely not, no. Not at all.
Fair enough. You decided then to take Barry to court.
Yeah.
And he was suing you.
Yeah.
And you were going for...
He sued me for a breach of contract.
Breach of contract.
Yeah.
And you were suing him for lost earnings. Lost earnings. You brought a forensic accountant in to examine, as some of the things we've talked about, you discovered. You also found there receipts for a manicure session somewhere, swimwear somewhere, shoes somewhere, meals somewhere, furniture somewhere.
Vet bills.
I
mean, everything. Literally, these were things, and one of the most alarming ones when the forensic accountants got involved was that I'd fought Santa Cruz in the first fight was in New York, I can't remember the exact date, but it was say 10th of July or something. It was in the middle of July anyway, so say the 10th of July. For the next 7 or 8 or maybe 10 days after the fight, so the fight was over, there was money coming out of my purse after the fight, which included sunbed sessions, women's lingerie shops. I mean, these were being deducted from my purse as a fight expense after the fight. But again, I didn't know this was going on at the time. And
they were talking about ticket sales. Like you were entitled to ticket sales, and it's always great to have personalities at your fights.
Yeah.
Rory McIlroy was at a fight.
Yeah.
And you discovered that Barry charged him £1,280 for a seat.
To pay, yeah.
Gary Lightbody
was there. Colin Murray, Shane Lowry. I don't know what Shane paid or if he paid him. I mean, Rory's paying him, so I imagine Shane's paying as well.
But I mean, you'd have almost paid these guys to come to your fight.
It's a big deal to have,
the television cameras on them.
Put them in a good seat so the TV cameras see them. And that's just the way the industry works. But, Barry, what Barry had said in court, maybe Blaine had said in court, one of them anyway was, we can't just give free tickets away to these guys. But what we think was happening was there were comp tickets anyway that the promoter, Barry, was receiving off the arena. So there was a discussion amongst our team, were they actually selling the comp tickets? So tickets that were free, zero on the tickets were they selling. I don't know now, but to have Rory McIlroy pay for a ticket was a bit absurd, I think. Yeah. And people make McIlroy's got all the money in the world, but that's not how it works.
That's not the point. That's not how it works. So. To all these receipts that were shown in court, what was Barry's response? What was the defence for these?
Well, he had no defence. It was, my barrister, a guy called Gavin Miller, who was brilliant, smartest man I've ever been around in my life, after you, Gerry, and he was brilliant. And I remember him just going through them all individually. is this a boxing expense? And McGuigan just said, no, don't think so. And that was it. That was it. He didn't know what to say.
So all that was coming out of your purse
Yeah.
for years. You've
Yeah,
no
yeah.
idea how long that was.
No idea.
I know you can't talk about the settlement. Why did you settle? Because, to use a boxing phrase, you had him on the ropes at this stage.
Yeah, no, we did. Well, so I had, so my legal team, Gavin Miller was the barrister. John Finnegan was the solicitor, and the junior barrister was Peter Gervin. And there's an interesting connection, actually. Peter Gervin, my junior QC, was married to Barney Eastwood's granddaughter. So McGuigan didn't like us, and being a very superstitious man like Barry is, I know I was freaking him out, but Peter wanted to stay in. Peter Gervin, the junior, wanted to just keep going. I wanted to keep going as well. John Finnegan was sitting on the fence, and Gavin was like, just take the offer, and his accept the offer. His rationale was, look, you could be waiting a year on judgment after this court case ends. You could be waiting a year, then you could be waiting another year on monies owed, at least. And in that time, businesses may collapse and everything. You may come to us in 3 years' time and not have a penny and just be down legal fees yourself. So if I didn't have the kids and Christine at home to worry about, I would have stayed in 100%, just went right to death. But
what did you want? Did you want blood on top of it all?
Aye, I wanted to expose them, like genuinely expose. I wanted people to know, really, really what went on. I wanted to get it out there. Because again, I don't think it was being reported on properly at the time. It was in the middle of COVID, and I think people, they maybe still do, but at that time anyway, still had a bit of sympathy for Barry and stuff. And I just wanted people to know. But in a settlement, obviously you can't talk about figures, but I think people, when I come out onto the court steps, after the settlement's done and say I'm delighted and very happy with the settlement, but Barry runs away in his car to go back to England, then I think people have an idea what happened.
Well, if we don't, could you tell us? Do you hate the man?
No, I did, but I wouldn't say I hate him now. I don't really think about him anymore, to be honest. I wouldn't say I genuinely had hatred and animosity for him for a while. But I almost pity them now because of what could have been. I mean, the relationship we had was great at a point, and if everyone just had been fair, it could have been magical, and we could have been in each other's lives until the day we die. But it was very, very sad what happened at the time, but it was necessary. Like it just had to happen. And it probably should have happened a number of years before it did.
What's happened to Cyclone Promotions now? They're gone, have they?
They folded recently.
Bankrupt?
Bankrupt, yeah. Couple of businesses Barry has been a director of have went bankrupt for whatever reason. But recently, Cyclone Promotions have filed for bankruptcy. Yeah.
You said the word sad, and I do find this all very sad because Barry McGuigan was the saviour for in my generation growing up. You were being hailed almost as the reincarnation of Barry, and you were bringing the both communities together. And to see the both of you so close and so far, it's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. And there's I mean, it's the same old story in boxing, isn't it? You hear about these things all the time. But I just thought it was something different, especially in the early days with me and Barry. I thought this guy really had my best interest at heart and wanted me to succeed. And no doubt he did want me to succeed and win fights, but obviously there was financial gain in it for him too. And even through the court case, Gerry, my eyes were opened. I knew I had enough to try and get out of this contract with Barry and move on and get monies that was still owed to me. But throughout the court case, I was like, every day I was flabbergasted. I was like, is this serious? I remember looking at them like, while the legal team are speaking about this, and sometimes Barry used to sit kind of behind me, kind of to the right hand side, and I remember big revelations and just looking at. He'd never look at me, but it is what it is.
Can you say anything good about them?
I'd say Shane's a very good coach. Barry's very good at, in terms of like matchmaking and guiding your career. Like he was really good at picking the right fights for me at the right time. I remember it was a fight, about maybe my 12th fight, and I fought an ex-world champion, a guy called Steve Molitor. And that was kind of a moment where I stopped him in about 5 or 6 rounds. But he was a good fighter, a former world champion, but he was just on his way out. And it was a big win for him. Barry, like, I mean, in terms of matchmaking and who he picked you to fight against, very, very good. Knows the game inside out. And Shane, good coach, but there's not too much more I can say other than that. But I will be complimentary about that. And I've seen a few things, and they haven't been complimentary about me in the slightest, but that's not surprising.
No chance of you ever getting together
No,
again?
not that I would want to, but she'd kill me as well. No chance.
No chance.
No chance.
Is Christine as bitter about it all as you are?
She was at a while, for a period of time, and to be honest, she was the one. Not the one that's seen it, but started to ask questions again around this Quig fight. And one of the things that was happening around this fight was we were in the Midland Hotel in Manchester, and Christine had went to get a bit of lunch sandwich or something, and she was with Shane's wife at the time, a girl called Sophie, and Barry's late daughter, Nika, and sitting just having a bit of food with them. And she went to pay for it, and I says, no, just stick it on the account. And she went, what's the account? And it was a Cyclone Promotions account. But there was a number of people in the hotel sticking whatever they wanted on Cyclone Promotions accounts. A number of rooms for people I didn't know on Cyclone Promotions accounts. But Cyclone Promotions account was a direct deduction from my wages for the fight. So, yeah, she probably knew before me. And do you know what? Deep down, I probably knew as well, but I didn't want to believe it. I just wanted to think that this wasn't true, and it's all going to work out in the end, and there'll be an explanation for why I'm waiting a year on my purse and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it never really came. It's
behind you.
Yeah.
And as you say, you don't even often think about it nowadays.
No.
You said at one stage in your career that you'd like to leave a legacy. What do you reckon? What kind of a legacy would you like to leave, and what legacy do you think you have given us already?
I don't know. Do you know, this is weird, right? This is really weird and morbid, and I'm not comparing myself to the great man at all, but I would love. You see, George Best's funeral. The amount of people that adored him and came out. I'd love a fraction of that when I die. You know what I mean? It's a weird thought, but I'd love people just to remember me fondly, and it's a nice memory for my kids to have, and just as a decent fighter and one of the lads, I suppose.
But you are. I don't think you have to worry about that. I think that's a definite.
I don't. It's one of the things. Like, I don't see why should you change if you've got a bit of use the words carefully here. There's certain words that I don't like using. But if you got a wee bit of spotlight about you, people, celebrity, whatever you want to say, but that's the word I don't like to use. But a wee bit of spotlight about you. Why do you have to change? Just, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and you haven't. And considering your background and Christine's background, I know you do a lot of work with the Integrated Education Fund.
Yeah.
And that's dear to your heart, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And you do want Protestant and Catholic to come together again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the stuff with the Integrated Education Fund and NICE as well.
Yes.
I'm a big advocate of it, and I'm genuinely a firm believer that kids should be taught together. I think there's a massive call for it. I think there's a lot of people want more integrated schools, but there's only 7% of the kids in Northern Ireland at the minute are schooling together on an integrated basis. So, like, if it hadn't been for boxing, that was where my integration was done. But I went to a school 100% primary school, 100% Protestant, and not a grammar school, didn't go to grammar school, a high school, 100% Protestant. So, I mean, if without boxing, I wouldn't have had it. I mean, you're leaving school to get a job at 16 or 17, and it might have been the first time you've had a genuine conversation with a Catholic.
Exactly.
Mental.
Where did you meet Paddy Barnes?
Me and Paddy fought each other as kids 4 times.
And what's the score? What's the score there?
3-1 to me. But I was robbed the other one. No. The 3-1, they're all close fights. In fairness, me and Paddy are all very competitive, but I won 3 and he won 1. So we were rivals at the start, but we probably didn't particularly like each other because we fought each other a number of times. But I kind of, believe it or not, outgrew Paddy and went up a couple of weight divisions, and then we became good friends and training buddies, and I'd class Paddy as one of my best mates, you know.
You have 3 children. Young fella in there, there's a young boy in there.
Yeah, in the middle, yeah.
Would you, if he said I want a box, Dad, would you
He's
say,
already asked. I've told him no. No, well, do you know what? I've got the kids are into football now, the 2 oldest kids, and they're all right. They're enjoying it too. The wee girl, actually, she's probably more keen. She's the eldest one. She's 13. She's more keen than the boy to box, believe it or not.
Because of Katie?
Probably
Yeah.
Katie, the Katie Taylor influence. I mean, she's a national treasure, and talk about a legacy. The legacy she'll have left behind is incredible. But I just think that I love amateur boxing, and I would always tell kids, you know, want a bit of discipline and self-confidence and to join a boxing club. But I think my own kids would have a big target on their back. Like, you know, everyone wanting to fill in Frampton's son.
Of course.
Everyone would want to do it. So I just feel like there'd be maybe a bit too much pressure on them. So I'm trying to steer them away from it. But
So there's going to be no wee baby jackal.
Where
did the name come from? Jackal.
My mate used to call me it in school. I used to get Carlos was my nickname because Carl. And we learned.
Oh, Carlos the Jackal.
We learned about Carlos the Jackal before in school, and my mate started calling me the Jackal, and he was the only one called me. The kid called Marky Adamson used to call me Jackal, but no one else did. And when I turned pro, McGuigan suggested you need a nickname, and I suggested that one, and he liked it, and that was it. But I didn't think he knew the relevance. He didn't know who Carlos the Jackal was. So that was
it. Carlos, we'll finish it there. Thanks so much for your time tonight, Carl. You're an absolute gentleman, and thank you for all the entertainment that you've given us over the years, and good luck whatever you're going to do in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank the fabulous Carl Frampton. Thanks, Carl. Thanks a million.